Governor Whitmer has proposed a $180 check for each Michigan taxpayer. So if you're in Michigan and you pay taxes, I guess I have to, right? You can get a $180 check for having done so because there is a surplus. So remember, not so long ago, there was a surplus created because people weren't driving as much and the insurance fund got overfunded. So they actually refunded money to a lot of people because of that. Well, right now, there's apparently a surplus in Lansing with the money raised by the taxes here in Michigan. And the question is, what do you do with that money? And here's the weird thing about governments. Our politicians always look at money and go, one of two things: spend it. I should have said one of three things, or spend it, or let's lower taxes, do a bunch of other stuff. And then what happens is you wind up with a problem that comes back pretty quickly. And they don't like to have money laying around. And while I can think of things they should spend the money on, I don't want them wasting it. But for instance, if they've got a surplus and we've got potholes, solve that problem first. But that's just me. Paul Egan writes to the Free Press, the paper I delivered as a young man. Each Michigan taxpayer could share in the state's record budget surplus by receiving a check for $180 under a proposal from Governor Whitmer and the Democratic majority leaders in the House and Senate. As you can imagine, with control of all three of those, this is pretty much a done deal if they want to do it. So checks could be issued as soon as this spring or early summer, a spokesperson said. The expected cost to the state was not immediately disclosed. So one check would be issued for each income tax filing in 2023. So a couple filing jointly would get one check, not two. Also, those eligible to file income tax returns but who do not owe any taxes to the state would still be eligible for a check. So simply, did you file your tax return? The governor is joined by the House Speaker Joe Tate out of Detroit and Senate Majority Leader Winnie Brinks out of Grand Rapids. And they detailed the proposed size of the rebate checks at a Monday morning news conference in Lansing. Plans to issue the checks to all taxpayers were announced Friday, but with no amounts specified. And the governor said, too many families are seeing inflation cut into their monthly budgets. We want to help. And that's the thing that, I don't know why, doesn't move me much. Because if you are having a hard time financially right now, it's true, $180 might help you for a little tiny bit of time. But what happens when they miscalculate something down the road and then they've got a shortfall? Do they raise taxes? And that's always my concern, is that when you're talking about how much this all adds up to versus how much it makes difference for you. Remember is it $400 that everyone got from the feds back when Bush was president? And again, it's kind of like, okay, everybody gets $400, but $180 is not life-changing. Let's put it that way. So the state has a budget surplus of $9 billion. $9 billion. And that's because state tax revenues repeatedly exceeded expectations following federal stimulus measures in 2020 and 2021 that were prompted by the pandemic. So they have a surplus of $9 billion. And if they give every taxpayer a check for $180, that's going to add up. It won't wipe out the whole $9 billion. But again, look at the federal government. It's got a deficit in the trillions of dollars. And then they've also got a debt. I guess the debt is actually trillions of dollars, the deficit. I'm not sure what it is these days. But the amount that they owe, the debt, just keeps climbing and climbing and climbing. And so some people have said, maybe if you balance the budget, spent a little less money, you might be able to start eating into that and chopping that down a little bit. And other people are like, it's never going to happen. So let's just ride it out and see. But when the state has $9 billion left laying around, again, it's a nice thought to send money back to people. But I would think instead, if there are any problems out there that can be addressed with that money, address them. And like I said, there's potholes out there. There's potholes. And by the way, if you spend the money on potholes, you're helping put construction workers to work, road workers to work, right? So I mean, the money's not wasted when you do that. So House Minority Leader Matt Hall of Richland Township said Friday he's concerned that the checks are part of a plan to halt a 0.2 percentage point rollback in Michigan's personal income tax rate that would likely be triggered by soaring state revenues. So this latest scheme, crafted behind closed doors, appears to be the governor's newest attempt to cancel the income tax cut that's due to every Michigan family, worker, and small business this year and every year afterward, he said. So apparently the way the law is written, the tax law in Michigan, if a surplus gets up to a certain point, then they've got to knock the personal income tax rate down and adjust it that way. And I'm not really sure which, to me, is better or worse, because if it knocks that tax rate down and we have a shortfall, then it's going to get bumped back up again. And I like predictability more than anything else. So I'd like the tax rate just to stay the same. But instead, like I said, don't create a surplus by just going, oh, we've got all this money, nothing to spend it on. There are useful things that it could be spent on. There are. It's just, don't go out and waste it on pork, to get some person, happy with their constituents and so on. So there you go.